as much as the sort of the back and forth and the terrible story around Khashoggi, but the threats, sort of the veiled threats, sort of by Saudi Arabia using oil maybe as a political weapon, is that inventories are just so high that it won't matter yet?
It won't matter yet. I mean, inventories are swelling. We're in refinery maintenance season. There are concerns about trade wars, Chinese demand. So those are the fears that are weighing on the market right now. Also, Khalid al-Falih, the Saudi oil minister, he walked back the sort of oil weapon threat. And so I don't think people right now are really believing Saudi's going to take 3 million barrels off the market. We have to see how this story plays out. But again, I think right now people are focused on the demand side.
Yeah, and on the demand side, rising rates, cooling stock market, not good for demand.
No, I mean, it's also the whole macro sell-off. And I think that's what's sort of weighing. As we get further out, as we get out of turnaround season, I think then we'll start looking at fundamental issues. But right now, we're sort of in the negative spot.
Back to the Saudi picture just for 1 second. I've heard so many people say, you know, look, the president is kind of taking Iran on. He doesn't want to take Saudi Arabia on, too, even though this situation is obviously gruesome and horrific.
Also, he invested a lot of political capital in Mohammed bin Salman as a leader. And so I think there are people in the White House who are reluctant to walk away from this individual leader. That said, the U.S. Congress is furious. Both sides of the aisle are not letting this go. And so you've had Congress send letters to the White House, triggering the Magnitsky Act. You've had threats of arms sales bans. So this situation is not going to go away, and Congress is going to keep it alive.
Yeah, and you know who's got to be loving this? Iran. Iran, they have to be loving this.
And watch what the Iranians have done. Absolutely nothing. They are basically letting this situation play out, and they're standing on the sidelines and subtly signaling, you think we're the ones in the region that are causing trouble? So I think this is going to be very, very interesting. I think the White House is going to try to pivot focus back to Iran, but Saudi's going to linger.
If we pivoted a little back to Iran, do you think that the sanctions on oil would ease up at all? Because that could send prices lower.
I mean, here's the interesting process. People keep talking about waivers. It's not a waiver anymore. You've got to get a significant reduction exemption. And right now, the administration has showed no signs of backing off on that. Some countries will get these exemptions, but you have to be showing you've made a significant reduction in order to get one.
Helima, does it really matter? Some of the data is showing that Iran is still exporting their oil. They're just going to send it to
where we don't know because the ships have turned off their GPS.
I think that is also weighing on the market. The stories that are coming up about these ghost ships. That said, the enforcement effort has not started yet.
Right,
when you
November
talk to
4th.
U.S. officials, what they say is we learned a lot from North Korea enforcement, stopping ship-to-ship transfers. We're ready for this. We're prepared to crack down hard.
But in some weird way, could that backfire? Because if, to Jackie's point, if the exports for Iran continue to these ships, they just turn off their GPS. That's why they're not actually run by ghosts, I hope. Which is, if they start selling on the black market, how do you sell on the black market of anything? You lower the price.
Exactly.
Right? You have to cut your price. Here, take my oil. You might get in trouble, but here, it's $40 a barrel. Just take it.
Well, that becomes the issue. I mean, they can offer their barrels, but then the U.S. government has conversations with the sovereign states and with the refineries that have access to U.S. capital markets. So if you want to do any business with the U.S. and they catch you taking it, you get sanctioned.
And it's going to get really sticky. Sounds like it.
You think it will? I mean, how does this play out? I mean, can I guess the sanctions, Helima, could last forever, but that's unlikely. So how does it play out?
This is interesting because when you talk to the administration, they say there are 12 conditions that Pompeo has laid out for removing sanctions, but that requires a major modification in Iranian behavior. So right now, we don't see any signs of us backing off this. We have to see how everything plays out in the Middle East. But again, right now, we have not altered our policy.
What's your best guess? How does it all play out in the Middle East?
In terms of the Khashoggi incident?
Yes. I mean, we've got obviously the horrible personal side of the story, right?
Yeah,
which is him and his family and his girlfriend and what happens here. And there's a missing journalist and but there's also the massive geopolitical side.
Well, I think right now you're going to be looking at a serious rift in U.S.-Saudi relations. The White House will try to maintain strong ties, but the U.S. Congress is very serious. And if a tape emerges in terms of anything, telling people really what happened at that consulate and it matches what the story is, again, Congress is not going to back off.
Maybe a lot of people may not realize this. Khashoggi was a U.S. resident.
He was a U.S. resident.
U.S. resident. It's a U.S. resident who walked into his original country's consulate and never came out.
And he was a Washington Post writer. He was somebody who was a critic of Mohammed bin Salman, but a respectful critic, and he had an enormous network of friends in Washington.
What does this tell you about, listen, MBS, okay? I've never met the man. I'm sure you have. They've got this finance conference, which now no one is going to, apparently. CNBC backed out as well, rightfully so. He's trying to promote investment into Saudi Arabia, Vision 2030, women can drive. Oh, here comes this great reformer. Suddenly he locks people up in the Ritz-Carlton. Now we don't know if he's behind this, but his country is involved,
No, I mean, it raises a lot of questions about whether this man was visionary at all, whether he's truly can transform Saudi Arabia. And again, we're at a low point in U.S.-Saudi relations that we have not seen since 9/11.